While learning how to administer a Linux system is not the intent of this course, there are times when you may need to adjust your network configuration. Note that we aren't going to dive into the details of computer networking in this video. We are just going to focus on some Linux network utilities. If you have had to use the command line to troubleshoot a network connection, regardless of operating system, you've probably used the ping command. Ping is a simple command that sends a special network message to a host. Ideally, the host will receive the message and send a response back indicating it received your message. It is the computer equivalent of yelling, "Can you hear me?" and the host yelling back, "Yes, I can." Let's ping google.com as an example. If you look through the output, you can see that the host that resolves to the domain name google.com responds each time we send a request. You can see the entire time it took for the communication. Also note that the ping command keeps sending requests until I stop it using Control C. I could use the -C option if I only wanted to ping Google a certain number of times. The man page for ping lists many more options, but I will leave it for you to explore. Now that we can test a network connection, let's look at ways to configure the connection itself. The first command we will look at is ifconfig. If you have ever had to look at your network configuration in the Windows command prompt, you are probably familiar with the ipconfig utility. Linux's ifconfig utility is similar. You can see that there are currently two network interfaces listed: my normal network interface and the loopback interface. Looking at the man page, we can see that ifconfig can be used to configure the devices. There is also a utility called iwconfig that is used for configuring wireless devices. However, we aren't going to use ifconfig or iwconfig. There is a replacement utility simply called IP. Most tutorials that you find on the internet focus on the usage of ifconfig, but that is slowly shifting towards the newer IP command. You can see that the IP utility presents much of the same information as ifconfig. It doesn't display any statistics by default, but we can get it to display them with the following command. The command provides quite a bit of functionality that can be confusing to navigate. Fortunately, it has a built-in help menu. The object field is where we specify a subcommand to be executed. We've already seen the address and link subcommands in previous examples. Let's see what else we can do with the address command. Notice that we can add, change, replace, and delete addresses. Now, let's look at the link subcommand. With this command, you can bring up or down the network interface. We can even, for example, turn on promiscuous mode. Let's temporarily bring down the internet connection. Remember that we will have to temporarily gain root permissions to do this. This command uses sudo to elevate my privileges. I set the device, my main network device down. Notice that I'm getting error message from Linux that my network connection is down, and I can see that when I look at the IP address. Notice there is no address anymore. If we try and ping Google, we can't even resolve the name. Now, let's bring it back up. I now have an IP address again. and I can ping Google. Another networking task you may encounter is to view and modify the routing tables. You can use IP to do this or the route command. The same information is displayed, just in a different format. For example, if we wanted to add a route to the 10.0.3.0 network, we could use the following command. Notice that I now have a new route to that network via my gateway. We can also use the route subcommand to delete it. Note that the route has now been deleted. Another common networking task on the command line is to perform a DNS lookup on a domain name. There are two utilities you can use on the command line to do this: NSLOOKUP and DIG. Both utilities performed a DNS lookup, but the dig command provided much more information. We can also use dig to perform a reverse lookup. For example, we know that Google has a DNS server at 8.8.8.8, but we don't know the hostname. This command will perform a reverse lookup on that IP address. The last command we will discuss is netstat. Netstat is a tool that displays network information such as current connections and statistics. For example, we can use this command to see all the open TCP connections. At the moment, I don't have many, but let's go to a web page and check again. As you can see, there are quite a bit more open connections now. Let's say instead of all the connections, we just want to see the listening TCP ports. At the moment, we only have the default ports open for a Linux system to operate. We can start a simple Python-based web server and see if it shows up. We can see that the port 8000 is now listed as actively listening. This video barely scratches the surface of the default networking tools available on the Linux command line. However, you should have learned enough to get you started.